Some closets hide more than just clothes. Tonight, we uncover 4 bone-chilling true stories where unexpected terrors were lurking just out of sight. From eerie noises to horrifying discoveries, these tales will make you rethink what's hiding in the dark. Watch until the end, if you dare. Story number 1. I had just started my sophomore year at West Pine Community College in Northern Oregon. The air always carried that damp, piney scent, especially in fall when the rain barely took a break. I'd gone back home that week for my cousin's memorial service, and during the visit, I stumbled across something I had completely forgotten about. Something that still haunts me to this day. But before I get there, let me take you back. It was February of my senior year at Stonebridge High School. I remember it vividly because it was one of the first days it had snowed that year. I was in the library during my free period, working on my computer programming project. The library had just 2 PCs with Eclipse installed, and my laptop at home couldn't run it without crashing. So I always made a beeline for one of those terminals when the bell rang. That day, someone else got there at the same time as me. He was someone I'd never really noticed before, and I tend to notice people. But this guy, Wyatt, blended into shadows like smoke. He was unusually tall with pale, almost translucent skin. His jet black hair hung low over one eye, and he wore a long black trench coat despite the heated rooms. On his boots, you could still see remnants of dried up mud and gravel like he'd walked out of the woods. I gave him a quick nod and sat at the second PC beside him. As soon as I pulled out my folder, I could feel it, his stare. It was like a hot beam of light burning a hole into the side of my face. I glanced at him and instantly regretted it. His eyes were an icy gray, glassy and hollow, but locked on me with unnerving intensity. I quickly looked away and busied myself in my bag. That's when I heard him chuckle under his breath. It wasn't a laugh like someone just remembered a joke. It was subtle, scratchy, like something mechanical trying to mimic human joy. Then he muttered something I couldn't quite make out. It sounded like, "Figured you'd come," or maybe, "Finally here." I froze. My hand was still in my bag. My brain immediately chalked it up to him talking to himself, or maybe reacting to some buggy code on his screen. I tried to brush off the discomfort and typed in my login credentials. "Ms. Harris really dumps the work on us, huh?" I said, trying to break the tension. He didn't look at me, but his lips curled just slightly. "You want the answers, right?" I forced a chuckle. "Nah, I'd rather figure it out myself. Easier that way." He didn't respond, just exhaled slowly through his nose like he was disappointed. I remember vividly that his hands never moved on the keyboard after that. He just stared at the screen with this still, statue-like stillness. Then, without warning, he stood up and walked away. No goodbye. No closing his programs. No shutting down the PC. He just left. But here's the creepy part. He left behind a flash drive. Not just any flash drive, a sleek black multi-tool USB stick. It looked like something straight out of a spy movie. Blade, screwdriver, nail file, and in the middle, the memory stick. Weirdly, it looked brand new, untouched. I waited. 15 minutes passed. He never came back. The bell rang at 2:10, and I slipped the drive into my backpack. I figured I'd hand it to him the next day. But he never came back. Ever. Not to programming class. Not to lunch. Nowhere. Wyatt was known to be reclusive, and some kids joked that he didn't even exist outside the school building. For the first few weeks, no one really cared. But by April, when we started prepping for prom and yearbooks, people realized he was just gone. And I forgot about the flash drive until this week. I came back home for the funeral on a cold Sunday afternoon. My old room hadn't changed. Same cluttered desk, same pale green curtains. I was scrambling to find a flash drive to transfer a slideshow of my cousin's photos, and that's when I saw it again, Wyatt's drive, right there in the wooden box above my headboard. I hesitated. Something about it felt heavier in my hand than it had back then. I plugged it into my laptop and waited for the antivirus to do its thing. No threats detected. The files loaded up almost instantly. That's when things got weird. The first folder was labeled Code Warehouse. Inside were dozens of files, assignments, source code, flowcharts, everything we'd done for the entire school year, all neatly organized. I opened one of the documents and realized they weren't just completed. They were annotated, explained, corrected. It was like a master archive. I felt a chill. Had he meant to leave it for me? Did he know he wouldn't come back? Then I saw the next folder, Audio. Curious, I opened it. Only 3 MP3s. Gloomy Sunday by Billie Holiday, In the Pines by Lead Belly, and a third titled only as Static 7. That last one caught my attention. I clicked play. It was just white noise. But beneath the static, if you listen closely, there was something else, whispers, low, barely audible. I cranked up the volume. The whispering sounded like my name, over and over, buried under the hiss. I ripped out my earbuds and slammed my laptop shut, but I couldn't stop. I opened the third folder titled Documents. There was one file labeled RIP April. I opened it and my blood ran cold. It was a list. My name was at the top. Then came my brothers. Then 3 of my closest friends. All of us had little notes besides them. Mine said, "She looked at me. She doesn't forget." I shut the file. I should have unplugged the drive. I should have thrown it into the river behind our house. But something compelled me, like I needed to know everything now. I clicked on the 4th folder, Images. The first image was an aerial shot of our school's floor plan. Not from Google, this was hand-drawn, scanned. Each room was labeled, circled. There were arrows, notes, escape routes, emergency doors. I clicked to the next image, a photo taken in the hallway, one of those laminated emergency escape signs posted by the classroom door. Then another, and another. Every room had been documented. Then came photos of students, blurry, candid shots, faces half caught, some sleeping, some laughing. The weirdest ones were the stills taken from high up, like from the vents or ceiling corners. Then I found a picture of me, reading a novel in history class. But Wyatt wasn't in that class. I flipped to the next picture. It was my front door. At night, no lights, just the faint outline of the porch and our address number, barely visible. Then another photo, closer. Then one from inside my room. I couldn't breathe. There were more files, all named cryptically. Listen, ready when, look behind, and one simply titled, You. I clicked on You. It was a video, black screen for a full 20 seconds. Then, suddenly, footage of me sitting at my desk from behind. I was home alone. This wasn't from school. It was night. I paused it, heart pounding. Checked the file's creation date, October 29, 2022. That was the night our dog wouldn't stop barking at the corner of my room. The night I thought I saw something shift in the mirror but dismissed it as a reflection. Wyatt had been in my house. I snapped the laptop shut, yanked out the drive, and threw it into the fireplace. I watched it melt in smoke. It let out a small crackling noise before warping into an unrecognizable lump. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I visited the school counselor to ask if they ever heard from Wyatt. They said no one ever filed a transfer, no parent ever called, and his emergency contact number had been disconnected. It was like he never existed. But here's the part that makes my skin crawl to this day. 3 days after I burned the flash drive, I found a new one slipped under my car windshield. Same design. Black. Swiss Army style. Nice try. Story number 2. It was October 13th, 2014. A cold Friday night in the small, fog-drenched town of Maple Hollow, Maine. My best friend Ethan and I had been obsessed with ghost hunting since we were 10. Now we were both 16, and though most of our classmates had moved on to cars and parties, we still clung to the paranormal like it was our religion. Every weekend we'd meet up at each other's houses, and planned these low-budget investigations, recording on an old flip phone and pretending we were filming for a ghost hunting TV show. Most nights, it was harmless fun. But there was one night, that changed everything. Ethan's house was one of those old New England colonial-style homes, built sometime in the 1800s. His parents had inherited it from his great-uncle who'd passed away under uncertain circumstances. They didn't like talking about it. That night, I was sleeping over and we were both wide awake around 11:45 p.m., wired on sugar and horror movies. We decided to do a ghost hunt in Ethan's house, something we'd weirdly never done before. He grabbed his dad's smartphone, one of the early Androids with a shaky camera, and I brought the old flip phone for EVP recordings. What started as another silly ghost hunt quickly turned into a nightmare neither of us expected. The basement of Ethan's house wasn't the dusty, cobwebbed mess you might picture. No, it was worse. It was cold, unnaturally cold, and laid out in a weird L shape. First, there was a cluttered workshop with rusted tools. Then a narrow hall leading into a windowless laundry room. And at the end, a locked wooden door we'd never dared to open. His dad always warned us never to go in there. But that night, curiosity outweighed fear. We tiptoed down the creaky stairs, whispering like they do on ghost shows, pretending we were being watched. Ethan turned on the camera and whispered, "If there's anyone down here, give us a sign." My voice followed, shaking slightly. "We just want to know you're here." For the first few minutes, there was nothing. We stood in the dark, flashlight beams flickering against cement walls. No voices, no knocks, no cold breezes. Eventually, we got bored and ran back upstairs, laughing at how dramatic we'd acted. Back in his room, we flopped down on his bed, excited to review the evidence. At first, we were disappointed. The audio was muffled, and the video was grainy and jittery. There was no creepy whisper, no orb, nothing. Just two kids being stupid in a basement. But something told us to play it again. Not sure why. Maybe the silence felt too silent. On the second watch, the mood shifted. There was this strange static hum in the background we hadn't noticed before. Then, in one section, right after Ethan asked for a sign, we heard a faint tap, tap, tap. Not from us. We both sat up straight. "Did you hear that?" I asked. He nodded, face pale. Then the video reached the part where I had been standing near the far end of the hallway. The light dimmed slightly. The camera tilted for a split second, and that's when we saw it. Behind me, just beyond the doorway, was something standing in the shadows. A figure, barely visible at first, but unmistakably there. Its limbs were too long, its head slightly tilted like it was studying me, and its eyes, God, its eyes, they glowed. Not like a camera glare, but like dim headlights in fog, milky white. Watching. And worse, they seemed to blink. Ethan paused the video and both of us sat there, jaws locked open, unable to say a word. We didn't scream. We didn't even move. We just stared at the screen as the figure stood motionless behind me, hidden in plain sight. When the video resumed, the figure slowly drifted backward into the doorway, almost as if it knew we were watching. The basement light flickered just once, then went back to normal. Neither of us remembered that happening. Ethan rewound it and hit pause again, zooming in on the shadow. The more we stared at it, the more it looked wrong. Not human. Its body bent at strange angles, like its joints weren't connected the way ours are. One arm appeared to stretch too long, fingers dangling at the knees. And then we noticed its mouth. It wasn't a mouth. It was a jagged slit, stretching ear to ear like it had been cut open with a blade. We didn't sleep that night. We left the lights on and sat back to back in silence until the sun came up. The basement door stayed shut, and we both agreed, without even saying it aloud, that we would never go down there again. And we didn't. The footage? We deleted it. Not out of fear of people thinking we faked it, but because it felt wrong to keep, like it would somehow call that thing back. Or worse, invite it into our lives. A few weeks later, Ethan told me he'd been hearing whispers coming from the floor vents that connected to the basement. He said the voice kept saying his name in a hoarse, broken whisper. At first, I thought he was trying to scare me, until it started happening to me too. Only it wasn't my name, it was his. It kept whispering, "Ethan," right in my ear when I was alone in my room. Always around 3 a.m. Always in that voice that sounded like someone drowning in gravel. We never told his parents. They would have brushed it off or blamed it on our horror obsession. We didn't even tell our friends. But once, during math class, I saw Ethan scribbling something in his notebook. When I peeked, he had drawn the figure. The same glowing eyes, the same stretched limbs, the same crooked slit of a mouth, over and over again as if he couldn't stop. Years passed. We grew up, moved to different towns, but the memory of that night never left us. I still dream about it sometimes. The flicker of the basement light, that shape in the shadows, those glowing eyes, watching us like it knew we weren't supposed to be there. I don't know if what we saw was a ghost, a demon, or something older, something that predates the idea of ghosts entirely. All I know is that basement was never empty, and we weren't just playing ghost hunters that night. We had become the hunted. Story number 3. You ever get that feeling that something is watching you, but when you turn around, there's nothing there? That sick twist in your stomach like your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up with yet? This story, this nightmare, starts with something just like that. A gut instinct that screamed danger, and it was right. Back in the fall of 2017, just 2 days before Halloween, I was a senior at Everglade High, a small school tucked into the mossy woods of Redwood, Oregon. Population maybe 2,000, if you count the cows. My name's Riley, and back then, I was just your typical small-town girl. I ran cross-country, played bass in a garage band, and hung out with my best friend Quinn almost every day. We were both training to enlist in the Air Force after graduation, so we took running pretty seriously. That's what we thought we were doing that evening, just another trail run before dark. But what happened next changed everything. We planned to meet at Bitter Hollow Reserve, a state park just outside town. Bitter Hollow was known for its towering pine trees, fog-drenched trails, and the stillness that made even squirrels seem like intruders. Most people avoided the place after sunset. Stories floated around, murders, disappearances, some campers hearing chanting in the woods, but we laughed it off. Ghost stories and redneck urban legends. Besides, I'd been there plenty of times with Quinn before. Nothing weird had ever happened. That evening, I pulled into the gravel lot around 5:15. The sun was melting into the hills, casting the woods in an amber glow. I parked beside an old wooden sign that read, "Welcome to Bitter Hollow, established 1939. That's when I saw it. Across the lot, in the shadows near the restroom shed, sat a rusted-out burgundy station wagon. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, but I could feel something or someone watching me. I tried to shake it off. Probably just a hunter or some lonely drifter passing through. Still, I kept an eye on the car as I stretched, hoping Quinn would show up soon. Then, movement. A man stepped out from the driver's side. He was tall, rail-thin, with shoulders hunched unnaturally high. He wore a denim jacket 2 sizes too big and stood like a scarecrow pulled from the field. The oddest part? His face was completely clean-shaven, no brows, no lashes, no hair. Just skin. Pale, waxy skin like he'd been sitting in a freezer all day, and his eyes, wide, unblinking, and locked on me. I froze. He didn't move, just stared. I fumbled with my phone, pretending to scroll. He took 1 step forward. I looked away, heart slamming. Where the hell was Quinn? Then, finally, her little blue SUV pulled into the lot. Relief flooded me. I waved her down and mouthed "creep" while gesturing toward the man. She didn't need to be told twice. She raised her brows, nodded subtly, and parked beside me. As I climbed into her car, I saw the man had vanished. The station wagon door was still ajar, swaying gently in the breeze. "I don't like this," I said, locking the door. Let's head to the other entrance near the waterfall trail. She agreed without hesitation. We drove about a mile down the winding dirt road and parked in a less isolated lot near the visitor station. It was empty. The park was closing in an hour anyway. We grabbed our water bottles and headed toward the ridge trail, hoping to squeeze in a quick 2-mile run before dark. I tried to shake the creepy guy from my mind. But that feeling? That crawling, watching feeling? It followed us into the trees. The trail twisted like a serpent through thick forest. Moss dripped from branches, and the chill in the air felt heavier than it should have. About 15 minutes in, we paused at an overlook. From there, we could see the lake below, flat and dark like oil. That's when Quinn nudged me. "Hey," she whispered, pointing down the slope near the edge of the forest. "Isn't that the same car?" I followed her gaze, and my blood ran cold. Parked half-hidden behind a thicket of dead trees was the same rusted burgundy wagon. No road led there. No tire tracks. Just the car. Waiting. Watching. "We need to leave, now," I said, trying to stay calm. We turned back, but it was getting dark fast. The trees seemed to close in around us, every crack of twigs under our shoes sounding like footsteps behind us. We broke into a jog, then a full sprint. But the forest played tricks. Paths we knew like the back of our hands suddenly looked foreign, disoriented. Were we going in circles? Then we heard it. A whistle. Low, drawn out, and too perfect. Not the wind. Not a bird. It sounded human, taunting, and it was coming from behind us. We didn't speak. We just ran. Branches clawed at our skin. Roots grabbed at our shoes. Quinn tripped once, but I yanked her up. The whistle came again, closer. We veered off the trail, cutting through underbrush, desperate to get back to the lot. Then suddenly, we burst through the trees into the clearing. Relief was short-lived. The burgundy wagon was there, right there. Engine off, lights off. But the door was open again, and beside it, a figure. Only now, it wasn't just a man, it was something else. Too tall, too still. Its jaw hung slack, eyes impossibly wide, glowing faintly in the dusk. It tilted its head like a curious bird studying us. No blink, no breath. We didn't wait. We dove into Quinn's car, locked the doors, and peeled out of the lot so fast, gravel slammed the undercarriage. We drove in silence for 15 minutes before either of us spoke. "What the hell was that?" she finally asked. I didn't have an answer. I still don't. That night, neither of us slept. The following day, I told my older brother, who used to be a volunteer ranger. His face drained of color when I described the car. That's not possible," he said. "That car was impounded 4 years ago. Belonged to a guy who used to hang around Bitter Hollow. Creepy dude. They found a woman's body in his basement. He's been in prison since 2013, but we saw it. We both did. For months afterward, I had nightmares of those wide, dead eyes watching from the trees. Sometimes I still hear the whistle, soft, almost playful, outside my window around Halloween. And Quinn? She moved to Arizona a year later. We stay in touch, but we never talk about what happened. We just can't. I've been back to Bitter Hollow once since then, in daylight, armed. But I didn't go in. I just sat in my car, watching the trees. Waiting. And I swear, just before I left, I saw something deep in the woods, something pale, something watching. So if you ever find yourself in Redwood, Oregon, and someone suggests visiting Bitter Hollow, don't. And if you do, never go alone. Never go unarmed. And if you hear whistling in the trees, run. Story number 4. There's something deeply unsettling about silence at 3:17 a.m. It's not like the silence you get during the day, the kind that's filled with a hum of life. No, this kind is thick. It breathes. It listens. Back in the fall of 2016, I was 19 and living in a rented split-level home in a quiet suburb of Missoula, Montana. My parents had moved overseas for work, so I stayed behind to finish college and save up before joining them. It was a simple 2-bedroom house, older than it looked, with creaky floors and that old wood smell that no amount of candles could mask. My bedroom was in the basement, half below ground, half above, cold, and always just a little too dark. I liked it that way. The room was cozy, except for the closet beside my bed. It wasn't a typical closet. It had no knob, no hinges, just a large square cutout in the drywall with a removable wooden board acting as a makeshift door. If you grabbed it by the edges, it came right off. I had leaned the board up against the opening from the day I moved in. I rarely opened that closet. It was deep, shadowy, and more of a storage void than anything else. But sometimes, I'd wake up and find the panel had fallen down during the night. I chalked it up to poor fitting or air pressure changes. Old house quirks. Then came the first night it truly unnerved me. It was a Sunday in October. The wind outside was sharp and bitter, whispering like it carried voices. I had gone to bed early after finishing a brutal shift at a late-night diner. When I woke up that next morning, the wooden panel was down again, but this time it wasn't just lying on the floor. It was leaning, propped perfectly against the side of my bed, almost touching the blanket. I frowned, puzzled. That wasn't normal. Gravity alone shouldn't have placed it like that. Still, I didn't panic. I got dressed, reset the panel, and brushed it off. The next night, I stayed up late watching horror movies. Bad idea in hindsight. I must have fallen asleep around 1:30. I woke up again at 3:17 a.m., not to a noise, but a sensation, like something had shifted in the room. I sat up, heart drumming, eyes adjusting to the shadows. That's when I saw it. The panel was down again, leaning on the bed. Same spot. Something was wrong. It was too precise, too deliberate. I left it there this time. I told myself I'd fix it in the morning, but I couldn't shake the tightness in my chest. I barely slept the rest of the night. Then came the third night. That night, it wasn't subtle. I had been tossing and turning for hours, listening to the trees scrape the house. Then, just as I was slipping into sleep, a loud, heavy thump jolted me upright. My room was silent again, but I didn't need to guess. The panel had fallen, or had it been pushed? I didn't move. I just stared into the dark until my eyes could see it. And there it was, the panel, once again leaning on the bed. Only this time, something was different. I heard it. The faintest rustling sound, like a plastic bag shifting inside the closet. There was no breeze, no open windows. Nothing should have been moving. My skin went cold. Every inch of me screamed to turn on the light, but I couldn't. I was frozen. That sound, faint as it was, confirmed a terrible thought I'd been trying to ignore. Someone might be in there. Eventually, I reached for the lamp switch, hands trembling. The light flicked on. And in that horrific, breathless moment, my greatest fear was confirmed. Eyes. Human eyes. A man, no, a thing, was crouched inside the dark closet, knees pulled to chest, pressed against the far wall like a spider. His face was pale, smeared with something, grease or dirt, I couldn't tell. His eyes were wide, unblinking, watching me. And when the light hit him, he didn't flinch. He didn't run. He simply turned his head slowly, as if pretending I hadn't seen him. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. It felt like minutes passed. Then somehow, my voice returned, and I screamed one word, louder than I ever had in my life. "Uncle!" I don't know why I yelled that. My uncle had passed years before, but it was the first thing that came out. My aunt, who was staying upstairs temporarily while her apartment underwent renovations, came thundering down the stairs. She opened the door in panic, and I just pointed to the closet, unable to speak. She yanked it open and looked inside. Nothing. The man was gone. I got out of bed and stood behind her, shaking. She stepped in, even crawling in to check the back wall. There was no one. She turned to me with a mix of concern and disbelief, saying maybe I had been dreaming. Maybe it was sleep paralysis. Maybe stress. Maybe. But I wasn't convinced. I refused to sleep in that room. I dragged my blanket to the living room and lay on the couch with the TV on low. I kept the hallway light on. But I didn't sleep, and it's a good thing, because around 4:50 a.m., I heard it. My bedroom door creaked open slowly. Then came footsteps, light, careful, deliberate. They stopped when they hit the hardwood in the hallway. And then the front door opened, fast. Whoever it was bolted outside, slamming the door behind them. My aunt jumped from her sleep and ran out, but it was too late. He was gone. We called the police. They searched the place. Nothing was stolen, but the closet was the key. Inside it, they found a massive plastic bin, one I'd never checked. It looked empty at first, until they lifted the false bottom. He had been hiding in it. There were fingerprints, food wrappers, and even a small notepad with strange scribbles, dates, times, and my name written several times. One page had a sketch of my bedroom, crude but accurate. The officer looked at me and said, "You're lucky." Apparently, a man had recently escaped a mental health facility about an hour away. He had been living off the grid, suspected of breaking into houses but never stealing, just staying, watching, sometimes leaving notes, sometimes not. He had likely slipped in through the basement window months ago, one I never used. I hadn't noticed it didn't latch properly. He watched me, lived in my closet, waited. The realization shattered something inside me. I moved out the next day. That night still haunts me, not because of what happened, but because of what almost did. Had I not turned on the light, had I not screamed, had I fallen asleep with my back to that closet, I don't like to think about it. Even now, in my apartment 2 states away, I can't sleep unless I've checked every door, every closet, every corner. I keep a baseball bat under my bed, and I never, ever ignore strange sounds. Sometimes I wonder where he is now. He was never caught. He disappeared that night. And when I lie awake, unable to sleep, I swear sometimes I hear it again. That soft rustle of a plastic bag. And I wonder, what if he's still watching? If your heart's still racing, you're not alone. These real-life horrors remind us that sometimes the scariest things aren't supernatural, they're human. Which story haunted you the most? Let us know below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and keep your closet doors closed tight. Until next time, stay in the dark.